Welcome to NavTalk Series 3. I'm Simon Prowse, your host. NavTalk is a podcast where we discuss a broad range of topics which will be inspirational and at times fun. NavTalk, brought to you by the Navwealth Financial Group, helping you reach your destination in life on purpose. Welcome to another edition of NavTalk. In my talk today, I'm speaking with a man by the name of Norry. And Norry has an interesting journey, and one that came about because of circumstances. And really the message around this talk is planning and prior planning, and just how important it is, not only in the things we do in life, for instance, and goals and objectives and creation of wealth, but more so about the next stage of life. And in this case, moving to aged care, and just the amount of planning that even needed to go into Norry's mother going into an aged care facility, and the thoughts and the processes involved, and of which is a whole new world to people, because until we're confronted with these circumstances, we generally don't think about it. And Norry is just a prime example of that. And joining us today with Norry will be Andrew. And Andrew is a financial planner within the business of Navwealth, an aged care specialist. Andrew and Norry have worked together over a period of time, and together formulated a plan for Norry's journey with his mother, and just how important it was to plan for that journey and look at alternatives around Norry and his family circumstances and assets and so forth. But it's a really fascinating discussion, and I hope you enjoy our Nav talk on aged care. Welcome, Norry.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
And you're looking very well dressed up there,
just
sir.
Straight off the aeroplane, actually, just to be here.
Yeah. And just a bit of background, Norry looks like he's in a pilot's suit, and he's got his name tag still on, so he's come straight from work.
Yeah, I have. Straight off an aeroplane. I started at 4 o'clock this morning, so you get me for a little bit of, while I'm still okay till about 1 o'clock, then I'll start to fade.
Plenty of coffee.
Yes, I've already had about 3 cups.
You just yell out. And Andrew, being our aged care specialist and a financial planner, is sort of probably as close as anyone into talking through the process with you. How did you find it?
Look, it was great to meet up with Andrew, because at that stage we didn't have any idea. I have a twin brother, and our mother had to go into some sort of facility, aged care, because she had a fall. It generally starts with a fall, right? So there's a fall, and then where she was living at home independently, but still the early signs of dementia, she's having that for the last 3 or 4 years. She's now 85. But after she had the fall, she had to go to hospital, and it was an operation on her hip, as normally happens. So after that, she needed care and she was in hospital. We needed to start to make that decision on what to do. And it was a tough time, because around about Christmas time, so everyone's busy and there's not everyone around, and it was getting that end of the year, and then the accident happened. And but then we needed help, because the hospital was great. The hospital was fantastic. They took good care of her. And she had her operation, and she needed limited rehab. But at some point, she started to get better, which was about after a month. And then it was what you said before. The hospitals were saying, well, you need to now sort out what you're going to do with your mum. And they were good in transitioning, setting up of the ACAT,
Yes.
the ACAT assessment. They were really good. And I since found out that if you're in hospital, it's fast-tracked.
Yes.
The ACAT's fast-tracked.
They want to get you out of that.
They want to get you out of there. So if you want that assisted with ACAT, it's through the hospital, it's fast-tracked, because otherwise, if they're at home, it takes months to get, interviewed and assessed, and then decide where you're at with the level of ACAT. So we got the ACAT assessment pretty good, but it was the hospital that asked us, what do you want to do? They didn't force us, because at that stage, mum was sort of in and out, but they asked us, do you want your mum to go back home, or do you want to look at aged care?
So you had the opportunity to take mum back home. The hospital didn't force it.
No, they didn't. And no, for mum, they didn't force, but they were leaning towards what are you going to do because we need the bed.
I think what they tend to do, Simon, is they work with the family to say, I think we've had this, the ACAT is the Aged Care Assessment Team has assessed your mother as needing care.
Yeah.
She's clearly been able to look after herself at home, but that's at the expense of family looking after her. And hospitals will work with the family quite heavily, and they will say, if the family says, mum should go to care, we really want her to go to care, the family, the doctors and the teams at the hospital will tell your mother she's got to go to care.
So they'll work with you.
They kind of take that, they work with you.
They take the bad cop angle.
They take the bad cop and say you've got to go to care.
Yeah.
They assisted in the care process too.
Yeah, they help.
They assisted in finding the bed where we said, well, we think here might be okay. We looked at a couple of places and they assisted in that process. They had their social workers there that I've got to say are fabulous. You know, their social workers, the people that you deal with are very caring in the hospitals when you're dealing with aged care, people, elderly people, you know. So, but mum was at that stage where her mind is in and out, and I think having the accident didn't help and exacerbated the dementia too.
Norry, can I ask a couple of questions on that, just to take it a bit wider for the audience? You mentioned mum's 85 now.
Yeah.
Mum was widowed, I assume?
Yes, the last 10 years.
10 years?
Yeah.
So she's been on her own in the home for about 10 years?
Yeah.
And was it a big house? Was it multi-story? Was there
No, it's a large, very large 3-bedroom apartment on the top floor, three levels.
Okay.
So here's my mum for the last 50 years walking up and down 3 flights of stairs.
So there's no lift?
No lift.
Right.
But great exercise.
Yeah.
And it's made her, given her the strength she had today. Because after the fall and the operation, next day she was up walking. And because she had that muscle memory and that strength, and she needed limited rehab, less than most people. So she got up walking. Physically, she was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But the mind is what was declining.
Okay.
And that's the problem.
And was that the main trigger, or was it because, I mean, she's getting older anyway?
The trigger was the fall to do something, but up until then, we were kind of pushing it, away and under the carpet.
Too hard to deal with.
Too hard to deal with. What do we do? So I do recommend that you plan a bit for these things.
Well, let's get into that,
Yeah.
right? Because I think Andrew's already, we touched on the fact that we've got this massive shortage of beds and the fact that we could be forced somewhere we don't want to go if we're not early. Talk us a little bit about that process and how you work with Andrew and
Well, at that point, we needed some help, so I rang another buddy of mine in the financial advisory business, and they didn't deal with aged care, but my friend knew of Andrew and your organisation, so he put me on. It was via recommendation, word of mouth, which is really where you want business to come from, isn't it?
That's where it does come from.
Yeah. So word of mouth was where it was, and then we started to make the connection. But at that point, my brother and I and our families were away on a holiday, so it happened at an odd time, around about Christmas. So here we are talking, a three-way conversation, and then we finally got connected by recommendation.
Okay.
And then we made the appointments, and then after we got back and it became the new year after Christmas, my mum was still in hospital, and then we had to decide what we were going to do. And then it was either care or go home, and we decided care. But I still at that point had no idea of the complexities involved.
Take us a little bit through that. So the doctors have said she's got dementia. You knew that. The hips repairing. She's up.
She's repaired. Yeah.
She's up and walking.
Yeah. Her wound's healed.
You've decided it's time to go to care. So what happens next?
Well, then we connected up with Andrew, and in the meantime, we're looking at places to go to, and then we realised this thing called respite. Which gives you rest, which is what it's all about. And they gave you a little breathing space.
Right.
Respite was good.
Which is that 60-day holdover.
I think you get that for the year, and you can think it's for a year.
And
you can break that up. You don't have to take it in 60 days.
No, a lot of people use it as a bit of a try before I buy.
Yeah, and that's
so
what
you
we
can
did.
have 2 weeks in one facility and 2 weeks in another facility and a couple of weeks in another facility. So you could potentially try a facility, see what you like, and then if they've got a bed, stay.
Okay, so respite is attached to the facility. You mentioned before a nursing home or aged care facility. It is an aged care facility.
Yeah.
So you might say, I want respite here.
If they have a bed.
I like it.
If they have a bed.
Yeah.
right?
And a facility's got to allow a certain amount of respite beds.
They don't have to. They're not obliged to. But in times where they might be a very expensive facility, so they're more obliged to have a respite bed because people are less inclined to just jump in and pay $1 million to go in there without trying.
Yeah, I got you.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
And we were lucky to find this place. So.
Yeah. So, Norry, you continue on your journey.
Yeah, no, we found a place for a respite, and that gave us a little bit of breathing space. And then I think it was then we connected up with Andrew. And then we started to go through the whole process and plethora of advice and what's available and all the options.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Norry, but I think when you arrived and you came with your sister-in-law.
Sister-in-law, yeah, at the time.
And their biggest concern was we want to keep the house. Mum's on Centrelink and doesn't have much cash, but we want to keep the house.
Rich, if anything,
She's asset rich and cash poor.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was all about, can we keep the house? It's not a good time to sell. We're in COVID, but we want to keep the house anyway.
Yeah, we just wanted to keep the house, and we still do, but that might change. That might change where we go with that. Yeah. But at the moment, the idea is to keep the rising asset.
And how do we do it? They're asking over $500,000 for Mum to go into this facility, and understanding and putting together a plan to show you it's possible.
Then all the acronyms started: the RADs and the DAP, and then. Then there was others.
The means tested fees,
the means
daily fees, and
And then I thought, well, you've lost me now. So, and then please explain.
So your respite decision was not based solely around let's try this facility, because you really didn't understand how you're going to fund the facility.
We just found a place, and it was local, and I knew it had to be reasonably good. It was in our area. And we just took it.
Okay. Let's say it was, like Andrew said, $1 million facility and you were there. Would that have changed your decision about staying at that facility in the long term?
Well, at least with respite, you can stop, breathe, think, have a look at it all and see what the costs are. Different facilities have different costs. The costs where we're at, basically just have your daily fee that everyone has. And then the DAP, which is the daily accommodation payment. But then there's the other facilities can charge an extra fee themselves if they want. So it's up to the facility. So this place doesn't. So we like that. There was other places more expensive, would have been nice, but they charge more.
So Andrew, this is a very much like a retirement village, a process where the village themselves controls the costs. With the government sort of funding a certain level, is that?
So the facilities, depending on how renovated they are, can charge a different amount. And then look, different postcodes. If you're down on the waterfront, you could be paying $1.6 million for a bed. If you're up over the hill, away from the beach or water views, you can pay $450,000, $550,000.
And are the costs mandated or regulated by the government, or is it really the facility and the government just provide a gap, if you like?
They have to be approved by the government.
Yes.
But that's your accommodation payment, whether it's paid daily or it's the RAD, the refundable accommodation deposit that you pay, is mandated by the government, but the facility has to apply for it. Okay. And then they all their fees and charges are on the government website. So you can look up every facility in the country and see all their fees and charges.
Okay.
So and their own respective websites. Their fees are on.
So it's very transparent.
Except for if they charge an extra service fee. So the extra service fee is the one that hurts most people, because that can be from $20 a day to $150 a day, and that's unregulated.
That's the additional fees that we notice.
Yes.
Some places can charge, where the place where my mother at doesn't charge that.
Correct.
So there's only the two fees at the moment. Because in my mother's case, there's no means tested care fee, but that could change. The minute if we decide to rent out my brother's property, that becomes an income for my mother. So then your Centrelink benefits change, and then your means tested care fee changes. So it's a constantly changing environment depending where you're at.
And after 2 years, when the house is included as an asset, then it will all change again.
Yeah, that's right.
A lot of technical stuff just covered there, guys.
Yeah. You got 2 years.
Norry, you're across this, and it's pretty impressive that the stuff you picked up along the way.
I've had to learn it. 6 months ago, I didn't know a thing about this.
Yeah, right.
So I had to make my own sort of checks, and then, speak to Andrew. I rang him up a couple of times and bothered him, and he didn't mind to answer the question. So, which is a good thing that you can do that.
Yeah. So
and then dealing with Centrelink too.
Yeah.
I've had to get information from there.
So let's continue on your journey. You've got mum in.
Yep.
We're taking a rest.
Yep.
We're looking at facilities.
Yep.
The financial side's now coming up, and you're starting to talk to Andrew. So what's the first thing you're doing around, or what did you find in that process?
Well, then Andrew hits you with choices. You know, you make a decision to go with him, and then he says, okay, we sit down, he goes away and does a bit of homework. And
so Andrew, that homework is around assets, liabilities, income, trying to assess where you're going to pull the levers in order to make sure the money flows and it flows in an efficient manner. Is that
correct? It's all about the family's wishes. Effectively, it comes down to, as everybody asks, how do we cash flow this? We know we're up for all of these costs once I've explained all the different fees and charges that are payable, because there's 4 different fees and charges that can be payable. So once people understand all the different fees and charges, how do we actually cash flow that? And how does different assets play with all of those costs? And then, well, in Norry's case, they wanted to keep the family home and not rent it out. So the cash flow was really Centrelink.
Yeah, that's it.
And how do we maintain Centrelink throughout so we can help fund her care?
Can I ask a couple of questions on that? Firstly, the motivation, Norry. You want to retain the property, which might have a sentimental thing to it, so there's no harm there. But then Andrew also mentioned you weren't keen to rent it out. Is that because another family member was there?
No. We actually don't mind renting it out. That way you keep the asset and then you rent it out. But once you rent it out, things change.
Because it generates income.
It generates income, and then all of a sudden your mother's earning an income.
Right.
So Centrelink's affected with a pension.
Right.
And then the aged care facility charges a means tested care fee, because Centrelink every 6 months, I think, assess you, or every few months you're assessed at your financial situation.
Right.
So once mum earns an income, they assess her as earning an income. And then things will change with her pension.
Okay. So the initial thinking around don't rent it out is don't stuff up what you're getting from Centrelink, and you know that you've got guarantees around that, and then we'll consider that longer term for the rental. Is that
yes, you're getting your pension, but it's not covering everything for the nursing home. So my brother and I have to fund the difference, because the pension doesn't cover all of the nursing home.
So you're physically cash flowing the difference.
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
When you rent it out, you're getting some relief with rent, but then your pension's reduced. However, overall, you're in a little bit better financial situation.
Okay.
Because you've got more money going to the aged care facility.
So, Andrew, in that process, if Norry and his brother didn't have the capability to fund this, how would it have worked differently? Would it be in a forced property sale?
Well, either sell the property or rent the property. But in our modelling that we did, we tend to model roughly 5 strategies for people. So we modelled selling the property now versus selling the property in 2 years. We modelled renting the property versus not renting the property, so they could understand the cash flow for each of those and the effects on the costs that the facility would then charge them, or the government charges via the facility for the means tested fees and so forth, how they would change, and then how their Centrelink pension would change. And if you rent the property out, then that's assessable income, unless a family member's renting it, and then it's just a gift for staying there or a contribution for staying there. So whereas if Norry and his family pay the fees, it doesn't affect the mother's costs at all.
Got you. However, it affects your cash flow, Norry. So we've got to be conscious that we're actually contributing to the next generation, albeit the older generation.
You're managing up.
So mum's asking for all that money. She go be growing up back.
So, which you don't mind doing if you can, but at some point you need to make a decision how long you keep doing that for. And
we had to look at ways to structure it, how they paid this money, so they could each see that they were each doing it fairly, or if one could pay more than the other, then we wanted to know that contain those costs. So eventually when they get their inheritances, they can sort that out very readily.
Gotcha. The good thing in our situation is that we have a good relationship together. So there's no issues in that area. And if one funds more, the other, or funds the whole lot, it's all sorted out at the end of the
Yeah, so it comes off the estate.
Absolutely, and it's all recorded. So we're very conscious of that with no issues or problems. My mother wouldn't have wanted any problems, with us. And my brother and I being twins, we're together, so we have no issues. Everything's
it was just structuring it so it was easy to understand and work out the better way to pay. Yeah. Because if Norry and his brother had paid the upfront costs, then that would be an asset for mum. Whereas paying the ongoing fees is not an asset for mum, so it doesn't disrupt any other costs.
Paying the fees. But what's also important with my brother and I, and we haven't touched upon this, is that my mum's got an up-to-date will and also enduring guardianship with my brother and I, and power of attorney that my brother and I have jointly of my mum's estate. So I'm glad that we did that many years ago in preparation.
Yeah.
That's one thing we did after my father's death. We revisited, and at that stage, my mum didn't have dementia. So, but in the unlikely event of this enduring guardianship, which I'd never heard of, but I'm glad we did it. And then also the power of attorney with my brother and I to my mum, and also amongst ourselves, my brother and I.
Yes.
Power of attorney.
Yeah.
Which is all setting up for, I'm glad that we did that for this in retrospect.
The foundations are good.
The foundation is good. It was set, and I recommend that really to anybody, and I'm sure you agree.
Once you get dementia, you can't change anything.
You can't change anything.
You can't change a will. Right. You can't get a new enduring power of attorney.
I tell people, please, if you've got that, if you haven't got that sorted, you're mad.
You need to make sure.
You really want to get those things in place while things are good.
Yeah, yeah.
Your assets, your wills, your guardianship. If you've got young children, who's going to look after them? All of that.
Yeah.
The solicitor guides you through.
I mean, you've got a pretty unique situation here with your brother, and you're both on the same page when it comes to funding this and mum. And in situations, Andrew, where a family's a little bit more estranged and maybe there isn't that harmony, and we may have a member who's particularly, or a sibling who's particularly funding these things, it sounds like it's pretty important we have an open, transparent conversation with the whole family, because if you've got a person putting up money for someone, they're going to put out their hand later on, and that could cause massive disputes, no doubt.
Definitely. We typically present our advice to the whole family, and if the whole family can't turn up, then we'll do a video link for the rest of the family,
right,
and make sure everybody at least understands what's happening. And we document it well then where there's potentially some disputes. And that way, in the event of the parents passing, when we get to settling the estate, there's clear documents to say, look, I've funded this, so I need to get this paid first. I've loaned mother or father this money, and now we need to settle that, and then we can sort the estate.
Okay, so in your process, tick, it's definitely there, and it's definitely discussed, because, obviously the longer term of this, if we don't put it out in the open, will be messy.
Yes,
right.
Knowing that you can't change the will. Like we can't change your mother's will now because she's got dementia. So we have to have other things in place that the solicitors will recognise and have documented to show what's been done.
Yeah. So you mentioned the facility to get in was, and I think you said $500,000 in your case, Norry.
That's an entry level.
Yeah. Now, I dare say you didn't have that just sitting around in the top drawer. How did you fund that?
Well, that's why we went the other path of paying the daily accommodation payment, which is an interest payment of that amount. So you're basically paying the interest component. So in our case was $750,000.
Okay, so rather than coming up with the $750,000, you pay the interest costs on that $750,000.
That's right. Which you never get back. That's what you pay.
Because that's your interest.
That's your interest.
That's your full go for not putting in the capital.
It's not the refundable deposit.
Okay.
If you had $750,000, you could pay that no interest, and then get that back. Debt for whenever you move.
And Andrew, in your modelling, you've no doubt considered this, and you've sort of cash flowed the interest rather than selling the property and dropping the capital in.
Correct. So
that was the choice. Yeah.
The difference is if they sell the property, then that whole property is sold, and the value of that, the sale price of that property is now an asset. So therefore, Mother Virginia would have lost her Centrelink.
Yeah, right.
There and then,
because there was money left over after paying the fee, the refundable accommodation deposit.
Yeah, but
so the money sitting in the bank. So
but the refundable accommodation deposit still counts for Centrelink.
Oh, right. Okay.
So it doesn't count for Centrelink, but it counts for your aged care means tested fee.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Oh my golly gosh.
So there's a whole different rules for what assets count for Centrelink and what assets count for your means tested fee with Centrelink.
Okay. Okay. So it's a minefield.
It is.
Okay.
It suits everyone differently.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what about these things called reverse mortgages where you can actually go to a bank and say, well, I own this asset, lend me money against this asset that I'm going to use to fund. Could you have done it with that?
We could have done a reverse mortgage. However, the interest on that loan is higher than the interest that the government charge.
Right. Okay.
So
there you go.
We have actually increased the pensioner loan scheme. So we get a little bit more out of the government. So you can get 150% of the Centrelink pension at only at about 3% and a bit
okay.
to help fund.
Yep.
So we modelled that as well. So we modelled just paying the daily accommodation payment. We modelled selling the home. We modelled renting the home. We've modelled keeping the home but not renting the home. And then we graphed all the cash flows versus the asset values for a 5-year period.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And Norry, how did you and your brother find this process? Was it daunting? It's a whole new world.
A lot of graphs and figures at that stage.
Okay.
Blew us away.
But it was pretty clear, I assume, once you modelled it, which path was going to be right for you.
You kind of lead to a certain path.
Yeah.
And when we just sort of structured it all in our heads after going away, thinking about it, then asking more questions, speaking to people, you realise everyone's got different paths. But then for us, we just went down the road of, for us at the moment, keep the property, tidy it up, and which we're in the process of. It's taking months, and then rent it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's a home that she's had for 50 plus years. So
there's a lot of stuff there.
There's a lot of stuff. And my mother, as part of her dementia, sadly so, and everyone's dementia is different, she was a hoarder. So she hoarded a lot of stuff.
And that was all her memories and keepsakes and stuff that would trigger.
Plus every bit of crockery, cutlery, cups and glasses and magazines and anything you could think of.
Oh my golly.
So you got a lot of stuff that's rubbish that we're tidying up. So, and you can see a lot of stuff. But then you hit with a lot of memories and things there too. So every sort of second weekend we're in there doing things.
Okay.
There's a bit to do.
Cool.
But we've realised we've got to relax with that and not beat ourselves up over that and just take our time with it because it's A, emotional and B, very draining to go through everything. Some people can do it really quick. It's like dealing with stuff. For us, it's just taking time because all I have still in my work. My wife has her work. My sister-in-law, my brother's semi-retired, but my sister-in-law works. So, and we're both got our families with our children. So, life doesn't stop.
Yeah.
So you've got to do it. So it can be really stressful or you can just say, we're going to do this at our time.
Yeah,
and just do it when we can.
We've talked a lot on the financial side.
Yeah.
Mum's been living in this home for 50 odd years.
Yeah.
She's gone into hospital with a broken hip or a damaged hip. She's been repaired. We know she's getting dementia. And then you say to Mum, you're not going home. How did you deal with that emotional side around Mum and that change? Because my golly gosh, that would be massive.
She doesn't like that because she keeps asking when she wants, when are we going home?
Right.
It's getting less and less, but now it's when can you get me out of here?
Right.
To go somewhere. But
so in her mind, she's still in the hotel room.
Yeah. Well, she knows she's in a nursing home, but she doesn't love it. But she has asked many times, when is she leaving? And that's a tricky one to answer because she's not going to go back to her home. She can't go back up 3 flights of stairs. And to be on her own in my mum's situation is tricky because she could go wandering. She's got dementia and it just wouldn't be right. You'd have to do everything. And she's not good at having people coming to her house for care. So if we went down the ACAT road of her not going to a nursing home, it's a cheaper option because ACAT provides you with a lot of services,
with the in-home care.
With in-home care where you get a package. And if her mind she didn't have dementia, that would be the much cheaper option because you get everything provided by the government. She keeps a pension and the services come to her, but she's not in that scenario.
Yeah.
And so I would ideally say that's the best way to go, but it's not for her. She needed care.
Yeah.
And so she's had that transition where she's lucid and then she loses it. And so that's a really tricky one where some people at her facility are completely dementia. So it's tricky when you're sort of in that transition.
So Mum and given the dementia, I get it, but mum in her mind is still not fully acceptant of the fact that she's not going to see home again, which is sad, right?
Yes, really.
And that is very, very, very common. Most people think they're going home. You can't sell my home because I'm coming home.
Yeah.
Right. And Andrew, in not just Norry's case, but others, how have you found that the family's dealing with this process? It's quite a difficult one.
Well, I think most families keep their parents at home for too long anyway.
Yeah.
So they find it very relieving to see them getting good care. They don't have to stress about their family as much, knowing that they're being cared for 24/7. So yes, they'll go and visit on their terms rather than having to visit on mum or dad's terms, which is, I need you here now, and it's very stressful for the family. So putting somebody in care is a very hard decision from talking to everybody that's gone through the process, but they're also very relieved that now they're getting the care that they need.
You said something pretty key there, that most people do it too late. How do we know?
Well,
it's too late or too early.
I think where it's at is you lose that image of if you're having to bathe and do the basic necessities for your mum, if they need to be taken to the toilet and all of those sorts of things, they're not the images that you want to have of your parents when they pass. So if it gets to that, they should be in care. So you remember your parents as who they were, not what they became. And that's the thing that I find people sort of say to me afterwards at times when I've been to funerals of clients that have been, through care and things. And they said, we wish we put mum into care earlier so we didn't have those memories of mum.
So I'm going to try and break that down a bit. If the parent in this case, or if the person can't fend for themselves, so they can't cook, clean, wash, do all the things a common person do, forget mowing the lawn, but do all those common things, then that's your pretty good indication that's trigger time.
It's a pretty good time to start looking.
Yeah.
You want to be looking.
And the planning process around this, and we'll reflect back on Norry's circumstances in a second, but how far out? Like, you're a fair way in advance on that plan?
Look, we can start planning really if you downsize your home. For who owns that home? If your parents are selling their home to move to another home to downsize, how do we own that home? Who owns it? That kind of thing. To which assets then you put into which person's name so they can flow with the will rather than stopping and losing Centrelink at that point. So there's lots of planning of who owns assets along the way that if you haven't had the conversation around aged care, you wouldn't know that it was even necessary or is it a good idea?
Okay, that's pretty important then. So it's really not about planning for the aged care facility. It's planning to go at some point to aged care.
Planning for your frailty years, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay. How do I start? It's like getting a will. Well, which assets do I want to go where to help me if I have to go to care?
Right.
So I don't lose Centrelink when my partner dies, for instance.
Yeah.
Or I can get Centrelink if my partner dies.
Yeah. Yeah. And now, Norry, I assume this was the whole new world for you as well.
Absolutely.
And then on reflection on that part of it, and would you have structured mum's affairs any differently? Would you intervened earlier?
Yeah. On reflection and looking back, I would have prepared and planned better. Seeing mum's condition, maybe selling a property and going to a ground floor place, or looking at aged care, understanding this whole system better, exploring ACAT, getting her assessed earlier. I would have looked at it and done something instead of the catalyst being the fall, and now you have to backpedal and make a decision.
Yeah, okay, okay.
Which is what we did. But the catalyst was the fall. If she didn't have a fall, I wouldn't even be talking to Andrew.
Yeah, I've got you. Got you. So again, you'd been blissfully ignorant of the fact that you didn't need to do anything.
Well, didn't need to. Mum would have still let her life and
potentially
ordered. Potentially, yes, but who knows? But she was, in a different way. I mean, it was. But now my mother's dementia is such that she's very demanding on us. It's great that she's in a facility and I sleep well at night knowing that she's in care. I sleep well at night knowing that there's nurses and there's There's staff there and they give her medication. They feed her. She gets 3 meals a day. I sleep better at night there knowing that. But the other problem with my mother, her condition is quite demanding on my brother's time and us, and every day wanting her, to be taken out, So that gets frustrating. But that's our issue. That's not for everyone else. So, I'm not, as I say, I'm not complaining. I'm just explaining.
But Norry, that's the big reason why planning ahead and knowing what facilities are in your area.
Yes.
For if you need to take somebody to care, you can get them into hopefully a facility nearby.
Yeah.
So if your mother's dementia was there and she hadn't had the fall and you'd found a facility because you've been looking and you've been aware of planning ahead, so mum was in a facility, then she'd be in the facility nearby, close to both of you, and being looked after. So that
would she want to go to facility by then? I don't know, because we discussed it at times, and she goes, "No, I'm staying home."
Yeah, but dementia then can kick in, and
But then the fall kicked in, so she had to go to hospital, which was leaving her home. And now where do you go?
Yeah.
So
also it's hard to plan to get dementia. Like, I'm not planning to have dementia.
No, you're not planning for dementia, but in terms of our parents, we can be a bit more prepared. So I think, yes, if you've started to look for places and you understand what waiting lists are out, what waiting times are out there in places nearby, as either you get older or as your parents get older and you start to see signs of them forgetting things or asking you the same question over and over again, then dementia's starting to kick in and it's time to start looking for somewhere, because dementia's one of those things that creeps up slowly and then it accelerates. So if somebody gets diagnosed with early onset dementia in 6 months' time, several times I've seen it, they don't know you in 6 months after being diagnosed.
Right. So you've got to get your skates on if there's dementia around.
Yeah. It can move pretty quick, and we're seeing it with my mum.
Really?
In some areas. Yeah. I mean, she obviously still knows us, but her actions and reactions and her sporadic moments of aggression and all of those things that are traits of dementia.
Well, Norry, I'm sorry about that.
It's hard work. It's hard work, and you see your mother go through that. And when you know the person was someone who had a life that was unbelievable, speaks 4 languages, traveled the world, amazing cook, and she's now resorted to this, eating aged care, breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
They make the food bland so it doesn't mess with their tummies and all that sort of stuff.
Apparently, so she's used to flavour.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing cook, an amazing background. So when Dad was alive, we travelled a lot. So she's been everywhere, and so it's just sad. All of that's sad, but reality's got to kick in. So
and the facility itself, you mentioned you get the sleep at night. The sleep at night test is great.
I get to sleep at night. I'm happy about that, but I know the mornings are a chore for us at the moment because of her demanding nature.
Yeah.
But that's not the facility's problem. Yeah, it's just the way my mother's reacting. They're doing their best to help her, but they can only do so much. It's really up to my brother and I and how we handle it.
Yeah.
But it draws at your heartstrings.
Yeah, I get you.
It's hard.
You mentioned in hindsight you would have done it early, and that's one of the things you've learned from this process. Is there any more key takeouts from your journey that you could share with us or any key things, messages?
Just be on top of it. As I said before, it's really important to have your wills and everything instructions.
Yep.
So I can't stress that enough.
So your estate planning.
Estate planning, got to have that. Got to have that.
Thorough one.
And do it for yourself, your family, your parents, anyone that, is going to be a future sort of an issue with it. You need to deal with that side.
Yeah.
But certainly the planning of aged care if you see problems. The ACAT, get that assessed if you think you can need to do that, because that could take weeks, months.
Right.
So I'd definitely chase up the ACAT.
Right.
And then nursing homes and look at respite. Then look at all the rules and regs. There are websites available. But if you speak to Centrelink, you actually get to speak to someone. They're very good once you speak to them. But it's a wait till the phone and it's a drag,
It's an hour and a bit.
Yeah, it's dealing with government departments. So you can have financial planning meetings with them too.
Yeah.
So,
okay. You mentioned ACAT a few times, and Andrew, you dropped what the acronym is.
So it's the aged care assessment team that'll come out and assess your needs for care. Yep. So if your parents start losing, or you start losing the ability to do certain things, then you can book an assessment and they will assess what level of care you need. So there's 4 levels of care, from a few hours a week where you can get somebody to come in and help you with some washing, ironing, cleaning, whatever it might be, all the way to, sort of 20 hours a week of care.
So it's like a complete health check on the person from their brain right through their body and physicality.
Yes.
Wow.
And you delivered a budget, an amount for all those different levels of care.
Sorry, say that again.
You delivered you given a budget, a financial budget.
Oh, okay. So if you're assessed for a level one,
you've got X amount of dollars, and then there's the other levels. So
you've got choice how you spend the money.
Well, that's right, but you've got the choice of what services you want to get provided.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it depends on your level of assets. So if you get assessed as level 1 and you've got lots of assets, it's probably cheaper just to pay for that care than actually take the package.
Yeah.
But by the time you're at level 4, it's much better off. It might cost you pay a daily, if you're on a package, you're paying a daily fee every day of the year and you get so many services a week. But the government subsidy is about $60,000 a year on those subsidies at level 4. But you might be in level 1, you might be paying $10 a day, but the subsidy is only a couple of $1,000. So you're probably paying more to get the subsidy than the costs of the care that you need.
More importantly to me, that's all about seeking advice and getting the right advice, because that's quite a big deal.
Yes.
It's going to be unique to everyone.
It is. It's very different for everyone.
Everyone want to have the service provided. I know my mother before wouldn't have wanted that. That's what she said. But it's better if they want it, and then, you got to get assessed and get it, and then they got to accept it.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
So Norry, you've mentioned the estate plan.
Yeah.
Doing it a bit earlier.
Yeah.
So in hindsight, you probably were a bit late with Mum, but it is what it is. Is there any other takeouts for you and this journey that you're on?
Just learn the rules and regs with Centrelink.
Yeah.
Just understand what's out there, some minefield stuff, and you can slowly get information. But that's all there is. There's nothing more. It's that's all it is. You understanding it all.
Yeah. Once
and
you're
then
in
we'll
the field,
what's right for your mum, or your dad, or your loved ones. So it's just understanding it. I can't say there's any more. Getting the advice is fabulous. You got to get that. Someone walks you through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, no, it is good. But you look at all your options, what's right for you, and you hopefully pick the right one, But that could change again. Our options could change.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Norry, look, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your story. And for everyone out there, it's pretty important. We can get lost in the legislation, the technical and the modelling and so forth. But until you're in that journey, until you can actually speak for your process, it's really hard to sort of join the dots and all that. And again, look, it's just that time and effort that we really appreciate. And Andrew, you've worked closely with Norry over the time, and you found the process that worked quite well.
Look,
hindsight.
In hindsight, what we've done in Norry's case is we've enabled the family to keep the home that they wanted. They understand their cash flow for what it's going to cost them to retain the home, and understand how long they can afford to do that before they've got 2 years to make up their mind before, mum's likely to lose Centrelink, in which case the costs will go up considerably. So at that point, there's more decisions to make in 2 years' time. So Norry will be back in touch, and we'll be back in touch around that time if they haven't made a decision on their home before then, there'll certainly be.
And you have to see where that platform is in 2 years, where you're at, with mum's condition.
Correct.
Yeah. So we could be talking a different game plan.
That's right.
So your journey is just really
evolving. It's just evolving.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So you got to go with it.
Yeah.
You really do.
Okay.
But no, it's been great to get the help, and I've really enjoyed experience with Andrew and Navwealth and where that's leading. So I do recommend it. I do recommend people getting help and assistance and advice.
Get the advice, people.
Get the advice. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And another journey, as we say, and I look forward to seeing how it develops. All right.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. Thanks, Norry.
Cheers.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to NavTalk. If you'd like to catch up on other episodes from this series or previous, head to our Navwealth website. Until next time.